Well, the do's and don'ts of getting an oil change. Is cheap gas the best deal? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, for the first time, and as long as I can remember, Tony Joe and I doing the program together, the start of the show is here and he's not here. So I hope he's okay. He didn't have his cell phone with him either. I just checked on that line. So let's hope he is okay, and we'll be here shortly. So we're going to be talking about the do's and don'ts of getting an oil change. Such an easy, simple topic, but you'd be surprised how confused people get when it comes to some of the aspects of doing so. Then is cheap gas the best deal? There's a lot of gas stations in and around the Metroplex that you see a big difference between price of gas there versus the price of gas at a Texaco. And Tony Joe's got some great tips, some great secrets, things you may not even know that address those two topics. So we'll get into that when Tony Joe gets here. And until then, talk a little bit about what happened today in the market, because the markets really had a tough day today. The S&P 500 was down 182. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 878. The NASDAQ was down 820. And a lot of this had to do with tariffs coming back into the news again. We really hadn't heard much about that. And Tony Joe did just make it. So I said that's the first time since we've been doing a show that you haven't been sitting next to me. You've been late. So I'm just glad you're okay.
I've got a note, though.
Okay, you have a note from your teacher? Okay, good. So, at any rate, well, I was going to talk a little bit about this, Tony Joe, is that the main problem that Trump has is he doesn't have time. He's got a limited amount of time, and he's trying to rush these deals when a trade agreement between countries, and we're not even talking about China. I mean, that's the big one. But most trade deals take 3 years to get written and accepted, and then another 18 months to get implemented. So he's trying to cram all this together and make it work, which we'll see how that works. That's a tough one, right. Pretty ambitious. But anyway, he's fighting back and forth now with China, and cancels a meeting. Of course, that finally something that disrupted the markets. It just seemed like the market was going to continue to go up. And you might say, well, why would you want to disrupt it? It's healthy for markets to go down and lose some of that excess, and the market's been anything but healthy. So we'll see what happens on Monday, but kind of a tough day today.
Can I ask you, do you remember a couple of weeks ago I was asking you about the market, and you said a correction is inevitable?
Right.
Now, is that what you mean? Is this what?
Yeah, I mean, it could turn into a correction. A correction is really somewhere between 10 and 20% loss, and literally the market will go down to the point of 20% and then come back up. Okay. So 20% is the accepted level that the investors and money managers look at as that's a correction. Okay. I wonder if it's going to take more though than just a correction, and so we'll see. Don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but right. I just think here's the problem is we have, and I wrote about this today in my client letter, is that we have a lot of investment bubbles where they've been blown. If you can imagine blowing up a balloon and putting all that air into it, and then it bursts. Mm-hmm. Well, this is the same thing with, there's so many of these they're blowing up, and it's, I never have seen this before, really. So it doesn't take too much bad news to really set the markets into a tailspin.
I see.
So that's anyway. That's where we are. Let's talk a little bit about. You don't even know what we're going to talk about, do you? I usually prep you a little bit.
You usually surprise me with a pop quiz like I'm in school. So hit me with it. What are we going to talk about?
Okay. Do you want to talk about gas or do you want to talk about oil?
Either or. I mean, I'll tell you. Well, I don't know.
Where's the spirit lead you?
Well, the thing about gasoline that I just want to point out is something I've been meaning to ask you or at least bring up if others have noticed this. And I hope I don't answer one of your questions, but did you notice, Bob, that gasoline used to be, we all got upset when it got to $1 a gallon. And then it got to $2 a gallon, and we were more upset. Then it got to $3 and even higher, and we just finally all gave up. So what I've been noticing lately is gasoline prices, and I've never noticed this before, and I wonder if others have kind of picked up on this. Gasoline, you used to shop for gas. You'd go by the gas station on your way to work that you always go by, and you'd see it was up 3 cents. Now it's up 5 cents, or now it's down 4 cents. You know what I've been noticing? In the past, like 3 or 4 months, gasoline goes from $3 a gallon down to $2.49 overnight. The swings are 50 cents at a time. To me, that's kind of uncharted territory. I've never seen that before. Have you noticed that?
Well, to go along with that, like the price of oil today was down almost 4.5%, which is a big down day on the price of oil. I don't know. It probably has something to do with geopolitical issues.
Yeah, and then we always have.
But that is a big swing. I don't pay that close attention to it.
I know, and I never really did until lately. I'm watching it go up and down 50 cents at a time in some cases. I'm like, that's probably trying to tell me something. I just don't get enough. I don't have enough education in the world of economics to.
I'll tell you, it's real simple what it's telling you. It's telling you that the market system, all the markets, are way out of balance. Everything's way out of balance. And we need some balancing, but that's not a process that a lot of investors want to go through, which I get. But I really get things back into balance. I think that's where we're at. Okay, so let me tell you how Car Corner Edition works, because this is only our second one. We did have where Tony Joe comes on every Friday with me to do what we call the Car Corner Edition of Prudent Money. And we used to have the 3 o'clock spot at KDKR. Now we've moved to 4:30. And it's interesting as the day winds around when I think I'm supposed to be getting ready for the radio show, and I look at my watch and go, it's 2 hours away.
We've been doing it at 3 o'clock for so long.
For so long, right. But we love to be here at 4:30. And if you've got a question for Tony Joe, 1-877-913-5357. 1-877-913-5357. Now, you're welcome to call in. The question does not have to be about what we're talking about, and we're real easy to interrupt and to take your question. So, I want to make sure that you know that that's available to you. 1-877-913-5357. Yeah, I said a while ago while you were absent.
Of course.
And then the joke is, you always say the same old joke. I'll see it at 30 seconds.
30 seconds to airtime.
Yeah. Well, you almost did that. But it's always amazing to me that something as simple as an oil change can be so confusing. So here's some of the questions that have come in through the years, and I wanted to go through them. The first one is the confusion between synthetic or regular oil. Which should you use? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, there's 3 kinds now. There's synthetic, which we would commonly refer to as full synthetic oil. That's your Mobil ones and things that are top shelf, real expensive per quart. They are synthetic material that's made in a lab, added to the base oil, which allows this oil to have a lot more longevity built. The oil basically suspends way more particles than it ever could in its natural state. Then you have conventional oil, which is good old-fashioned oil that used to be around in the 70s, 80s. We were all used to it. That's all we used to use. And then there's one in the middle called a synthetic blend. And that is my oil of choice. Synthetic blend is obviously just what it says. It's a blend of synthetic and conventional. It's moderately priced. And here is why I think that is the best oil for everybody to use. So start with the synthetic oil that goes 25,000 miles between oil changes. Yes, it costs more, but it goes 25,000 miles, so you save a lot of those oil changes. Well, actually, that's not really the case. What you have to understand is this. You can use really high-end, expensive, synthetic, fully synthetic motor oil in your vehicle. Are you doing a good thing for it? Yes, yeah, I got no quarrel with that. However, the oil filter that's on that vehicle is still going to have to be replaced when it gets full of contamination. When does that happen? Well, that filter is not much different. I mean, the filter is no different than the filters we used to have. And when it's full of contamination, it needs to be replaced with a new filter. Generally, that filter, when you take it off and throw it away, is going to contain about half to 3/4 of a quart of oil. So now you've got to go through the inconvenience of changing the oil filter, adding or topping off the oil so it's full. Then you're going to have to do that every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. So why not instead just go with synthetic blend and have the oil changed every 3,000 to 5,000 miles? Because if you put pen to paper, you're coming out money ahead that way. The synthetic blend oil is very, very high quality oil. It's designed to burn in today's sophisticated engines, and it will give you results of, if you change the oil when you're supposed to, there isn't a car out there that can't go 300,000 miles with, very little problems, major problems. I'm talking about internal engine problems.
So I think, and I may not have this right, but I think that you said at one point that, if you start out with regular oil, that if they try to switch you to a synthetic, you probably shouldn't do that.
Probably not. So here's the thing. For those of us that have cars that we used conventional or synthetic blend, and you got 140,000 and your conscience tells you maybe I better start switching to full synthetic to get more life out of my car. No, don't do that. Do not ever go to full synthetic oil to make a change. If you're going to use fully synthetic oil, you use it from day one, right out of the showroom floor. That's the oil that you're going to use in that car, and that's the oil that if you want to use full synthetic, then that's a case in point where you can do that the whole life of the car. You don't have to. Like I said, Bob, let me reiterate to make it clearer. You can use full synthetic the whole life of the car if you want to. What you can't do is use synthetic blend and then switch to full synthetic after 120,000 miles.
But can you switch though from regular oil to synthetic blend?
No, you don't want to.
So you don't want to do that at period.
But you can go from the fully synthetic, expensive, top shelf oil to synthetic blend anytime you want.
Move it down.
So it works.
Right.
The other way works fine. You just don't want to go to a full synthetic after you've been using conventional oil or synthetic blend, because it's so highly detergent and so much better lubricating properties that it'll actually dislodge some hydrocarbon sludge that has built up in certain little places here and there in the engine. And then you may have leaks, and it may wash bearings clean, and any little buildup that you had in there was giving you good service. And once you wash that stuff away, you're just opening yourself up for problems. So it's best to really never go to a full synthetic after you have 100 and whatever, any time, really.
1-877-913-5357. If you got a question for Tony Joe, we got a line open. 1-877-913-5357. He just doesn't take financial questions. That's me that takes financial questions.
No, I do. I have good advice. Don't take any wooden nickels. Don't bet on the horses.
Yeah, okay. So
you taught me that years ago.
Yeah. So questions for me, you can go to prudentmoney.com. Top of the page, ask Prudent Money, send them in, or we can talk on Monday, whatever works best for you. Let's talk a little bit about the question of why change the oil.
Good.
And why, we talk about oil a couple times a year, typically, at least. We do it on purpose because people, no, change the oil. But you really got to know why you're changing the oil.
Yes, and this is really important, more so in the last 10 years than ever before. Our dads used to teach us to change the oil. Maybe, I'm just assuming, granddad or dad, somebody taught you, you got to change the oil, and here's why. And those things are all good information for the day that they gave you this advice. However, there's a lot of things that we need to know now. So I'd like to update you on the education a little bit and how, so I can point out how much more important it is now to change oil. Not just to change oil, but to change oil on time. Use the right weight oil that's recommended. It's usually written right on the oil cap or very easy to look up online or in your owner's manual. Now, there are devices and systems now on an automobile engine that absolutely you've got to have clean, fresh oil. When it gets to a certain point, you've got to drain that oil and get rid of it and rejuvenate the oil or renew the oil to make it clean and full again. Here's why. One of the simplest things that's easy to understand is most of the smaller engines now are turbocharged. Now, the engine really kind of spins at an RPM range of 0 to, say, 6,000 or 7,000 RPMs. But the turbocharger actually spins at a very 3 to 4 times that amount, even more in some turbochargers. So you've got these spinning bearings at really fast RPM rates, much faster than the engine. And that bearing is going to require very good lubrication, because if the bearing goes out, you're buying a new turbo. You don't want to destroy the turbocharger or make the turbocharger faulty in any way, because that is expensive and it is there for a reason, to give you more power. That engine, 4-cylinder engine without the turbo, would be a dud. It just wouldn't, you'd be very disappointed in the performance. So you need that turbo on there, but that turbo really needs good, clean, fresh oil all the time. So changing the oil in the filter on time today is even more critical than years ago, where you could slide and let it go for a while and really not worry too much. And a lot of people had their own ideas about when to change the oil. Now, every 3,000 to 5,000, change the oil and the filter. Use enough of the right stuff. And there's another very critical thing that a lot of people probably aren't familiar with, but there's a system now on the car for performance and emission controls called variable valve timing. Variable valve timing on most engines is controlled through oil pressure. So oil will pressurize a circuit to advance or retard the valve timing. Then, when you let off the gas, it will release the pressure on that sprocket or phaser, whatever you want to call it. And it's very important that that system works correctly, because if it doesn't work correctly, you get poor performance, a check engine light coming on, you can't get your car inspected, and this can all be due to the fact that you need an oil change. Hopefully, when you get the oil changed, it'll correct that situation, but in some cases, if you let it go too long, you can do a lot of expensive damage to your engine Two, not necessarily the engine as we used to think of it, but parts related to the variable valve timing, which are enormously expensive, labor and parts-wise. So changing the oil for the price is a very good investment, if you will, Bob, to prevent short-term expensive repairs on the engine. You don't really want to do that. It's a losing battle, and it can come to the point where the damage is so severe, you just need a new engine. And that is going to be really costly. So my advice is spend a little bit to get the oil changed on time and prevent all this long-term internal damage to parts and pieces that some of us may not even be aware exist. Even if we think we know engines, there's parts for the variable valve timing and the turbocharger and other things that I won't go into, but there's a lot of devices on a car now that are very susceptible to dirty oil, and it's of the utmost importance that you change it, more so than ever before.
You mentioned 5,000 to 7,000 miles. You've also said in the past that really has to do with where you live.
Yes. Let me go over something real quick that would be good information for those listeners to hear so they can understand the light on your dashboard, or the telltale on the dash that tells you maintenance now, time for an oil change, whatever the light says. There's different manufacturers have different telltale displays. But the point is, you don't want to go by that light that comes on to tell you, hey, it's time to get an oil change. You really don't want to go by that. The reason for that is because in some cases, those mileage interval spaces between oil changes are way too far apart for the climate we have here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And you have to understand why I've seen some of those maintenance lights come up at 7,500 miles between oil changes. That is a long time between oil changes, especially when you're living in Dallas-Fort Worth, where it's hot and it's, you're sitting in traffic with the air conditioner on, and the cars all in front of you are hot, and, you're not moving, and it's just a very hot environment under that hood. Now, why do they do that? Well, the reason they do that is politics. It's those cars now, every car now can be sold any place on the planet. So the manufacturers have to come up with a formula which meets the guidelines for just about every climate that this car could end up in. Now, we know if that car ends up in Alaska or northern Canada, and it's going to be mostly cold climate stuff. If it ends up in South America, then it's going to be a very extreme warm type of climate for that car. So they have to find this happy medium between the right weight of oil, the right viscosity, if you will, and how long between oil changes. What numbers will kind of fit everything. And that's why it's important for you to know that, because what we want to do here in this climate that we live in, we want to make sure we change the oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. Don't go by it's better to put a sticker on a window like we used to in the old days, mark the mileage at the time of the oil change, and when it gets to be 3,000 to 5,000 more, then you've got to get another oil change. Don't go by that light that's up on the dash. Every time you get an oil change, that light can be reset, so it doesn't come on at awkward times. Once you get the synchronization off between the oil light and the timing that you're doing with the oil change, that light can come on when you really don't need an oil change. So it's kind of a catch-22. You got to reset it, and if you don't know how, it's very simple in most cases.
So Tony Joe, 30 seconds. What do you think about the quick oil changes, 5-minute oil changes?
My opinion is I don't think I could do a good, thorough oil change in 5 minutes. I don't know on some cars that the oil will actually all drain out within 5 minutes. I don't like the 5-minute advertisement. Now, I don't know that it really it doesn't take longer than that, because I can't see the physics behind it. Some cars, with an 8-quart oil pan aren't going to drain in 5 minutes.
This is Bob Brooks. You got a question for me? Please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.